Hello there ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to what I painted this month for May 2016. As you can see, a few items here. There would be more, but I'll get to why there isn't very shortly. As you can see, they're all for my Kings of War Orange Goblin Army, a Rabble Regiment, and two of the brand spanking new Metal Goblin War Machines. So a definite upgrade on everything I managed to do last month, which was only 2 piggies. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if there's a vast amount of painting done in this month, that being June, because there's quite a few things already done as I'm recording this video, and there are a few more that are very close to completion. So let's look at some of these, shall we? Let's start with the Goblin Rabble. Now, there's nothing too interesting to discuss as far as the paint job goes. If you've ever heard me describe the painting of any of my other Goblin units, it's pretty much the same. Very basic paintwork. An orange base coat with a flesh wash over that. The skin, obviously. The one thing I did differently with the skin this time, usually I go with Goblin Green and then a wash over that, and then Goblin Green again on the raised areas. But this time I thought I'll just cut out the middleman. So I just went for a dark green first, and then just highlighted it with Goblin Green. So that saved a little bit of time. I found these the easiest to paint of all the Goblin units. Their swords are very easy to do compared to spears, for example, which are longer and pointier and more awkward to get the paintbrush around, especially when they're all on a base together like this. Assembling them, though, is a little more difficult for any of them that aren't archers, because with these guys and the spears, they all come with metal arms, metal shields, metal swords, metal spears. So, me being me, there's no way I could just have a piece of metal sticking onto plastic like that. So of course I had to drill holes through all of the torsos and then pin both the arms in place on each side. So they're held together by the same pin, which is extra strength compared to if I was just using 2 separate pins on either side. As far as the amount of them on the base goes, I'm trying to cram on as many as I can while still making it easy to paint them nowadays. Since the Kings of War Rules Committee brought in their recommended number of miniatures, and it's compulsory at the Mantic tournaments, then I've had to up the number of models that I would ideally like to put on the bases. So if I want to turn this into a legion at some point, which would be 2 of these regiments stuck together, and then more at the back, then hopefully I've left myself enough room to be able to do that now. Because this regiment is supposed to be 20 models, and I've actually got 13, so if I do another one exactly the same, then I would have a horde, which is supposed to be 40, and I'd have 26. Then, if I want to add the back row, that's supposed to take the unit up to 60. So I would need to add 15 more models on that area at the back, which is definitely doable. Next up, we've got some war machines. Now the first thing that'll stand out to you is the fact that they have black lines drawn on the front. That's because in Kings of War, war machines are supposed to come on 50mm bases, but I didn't feel there was enough space to put the crew and the machine on a 50mm base. In fact, they're supposed to have 3 crew, and I've gone with 2 to save a bit of space as well, and they're on 60mm bases. So those lines at the front there represent the firing arc, just to stop you modelling for advantage and taking a really wide base on a war machine. Because they do give you a little bit of leeway in Kings of War. If you've got a big monster that doesn't quite fit on the standard base, you can go a little bit larger. But these lines are just to make sure that the firing arc of the weapon isn't improved by its base being slightly bigger. One of them is the big rock thrower, and one of them is the sharp stick thrower. I think you can probably work out which one's which. All 3 crewmen are represented here, although I've left 1 different one off each kit. So I've got 2 spare crewmen left over for something else now. I think 2 of them's enough. And I've put the crew in slightly different positions on each one to give them even more variety. These kits are somewhat the same. I'd say about 50% of the metal pieces are identical, and of course the crew are the same as well. And assembling them was a lot less tricky than I imagined with them being metal. The pieces seem to slot together quite nicely. I suppose we'll find out exactly how sturdy they are if I ever drop them or a dice bounces into them or something over the course of a game. One thing I did though, I've learned in the past when gluing down metal war machines to bases, you can't just rely on the metal against the base, because that's not a very big surface area that's being glued down, so any kind of vibration can shake it loose. I've had that happen with some of my bolt action stuff from time to time. So what I did with these machines was put a thin layer of milliput all over the base, then press the machines, once they were assembled, down into the milliput while it was still setting, and then a little while later very carefully pulled it out of the milliput again. I then super glued it in so that it made a very solid little foundation in there with imprints of all the wheels. So there's a very, very large surface area that's being stuck down to the base, which hopefully should make them incredibly secure. And I did the same thing with the crew as well. I dug their feet down into the milliput a little bit. So that's a top tip for anyone. I definitely recommend doing that. The paintwork, very, very basic again, as with most of my Kings of War goblins. Mostly base coats and washes, some dry brushing on the stones. And there is one other thing that I managed to get painted this month as well, and here it is, and it's not this entire unit, it's one goblin. This unit was actually finished before the minimum model count rules came out, so I was one short of this being a legal horde, so I've stuck one more guy in there. It's the one, you may be able to see him, it's the guy with the blue hair towards the bottom right of the right hand side. The one whose spear seems to be facing a slightly different way from most people's. That was the best way I could fit him on, and I did pin him down into the wooden base as well, because obviously all the round slots were used because it was already completed, this unit. So I had to drill a couple of holes and then super glued him down on there. And because he's in the middle, I'm not that worried about him being not quite as secure as the rest of them. So with these additions, my Kings of War army is looking quite rounded out now. I'm almost completely satisfied with it, and I would have had even more done in May. However, as I was painting my trolls for Kings of War also, which require 5 coats of Agrax Earthshade on the skin, the way I do them, and that wash, that Citadel shade completely vanished. I used it all up with only a couple of days left in the month, so there was no way I was going to finish them in time, so they're just sitting there on the table staring at me, so close to completion. They just need a few more layers of wash and then they'll be done pretty much. So they're definitely going to get done in June. I've ordered one of the new jumbo pots of Agrax Earthshade. I just ordered it from Asylum Wargaming. Don't forget, if you're placing any orders from Asylum Wargaming, use the special code ANDY2D6 for a 5% discount. Cha-ching. And also, a lot of terrain is going to be done this month as well. I've already finished quite a few pieces, and I'm not going to give too much away on exactly what they are. Anyway, folks, this has been everything I've painted for this month, and I will catch you next time. Ta-ta!